Welcome to the Big Biz Show.
Taking care of business.
You want fast-talking, hard-hitting discussions on business and finance? Maybe with a barroom slant and some really salty peanuts? We're not counting calories. We're counting cash. Before we get to the man with the financial plan, meet the money team. Costa, Mary, and Greg. Now Captain Finance himself, Sully.
Hey, they're live from the Loft 100 Studios in sunny San Diego, California. It's the Big Biz Show here. Sully here, Mary there, Greg Tara. Mike Costa will be back with us next week. He had a little bit of a family emergency, but thankfully things are moving in the right direction there. And let's say hello to the DTC. Hey! Good to see you guys today. Are you, Mary, are you feeling any better about the economy or groceries post-election? Are you still treating your hissing chest wound in emergency?
I'm not feeling better, no, because then I saw something about, people over in a tax bracket getting cuts and then my tax bracket getting no cuts. I don't know if that's true or not, because now I don't know what to believe and what not to believe. No, I didn't. I want to ask Howie about that. It's on my list to ask Howie today, actually.
Oh, there you go. I don't know if Howie's talking. Is Howie talking about taxes?
No, but he's
talking about more importantly for you. We'll talk. I tell you what, we will spend next week talking about taxes because we have a 72,000-page tax code that we all use, just like corporations use, to avoid taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Not evade taxes, that would be a felony.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But tax avoidance means write-offs. Mm-hmm. And you use the tax code to your advantage. The most you can. So do you. Sure. So do I.
I'll do, right.
So does Amazon. Now, is it fair that they can write off so much crap that they can pay nothing? Probably not. But that's our progressive tax code that is now, I would say 72,000 pages. It's actually 81,000 pages. Can somebody look up, maybe Chris Castillo, one of our producers, could look up, how many pieces of paper is 82,000 pages? How many stories is that? It's got to be like a 2-story building, right?
How many trees is that?
Right, exactly right.
I mean, how many pages is our progressive tax code?
Yeah.
Do you realize, I walk into my accountant's office and he has framed on the wall this, literally, the first tax return. And it had your name, your address. I didn't think they called it Social Security back then, whatever. And then it basically said, income and then times 0.07. Pay here.
Yeah. That's it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
So there's a fair tax and there's a fair tax and a flat tax. Mm-hmm. And a fair tax is a consumption tax. Could you imagine if you made $52,000 a year, taking home $1,000 a week? That's your pay. No taxes are taken out of it. But everything you pay for has a consumption tax. In other words, the more you use, the more you pay. Mm-hmm. Just like it's like a sales tax, so to speak. Seems fair. The problem with that is, if let's say that consumption tax is 25%. Okay, so everything you pay 25%. 25% to somebody making $50,000 a year is a lot more than somebody making $2 million a year. Right. So there has to be some sort of a calculation there where everybody gets a check at the beginning of the year for a little bit of it. But there's a couple of the flat tax.
Would that be on everything? Groceries, gas, hotels, everything?
No write-offs anymore. I think they said you could have a charitable write-off for charitable giving. You get to write off your tax, but everything else is basically you're paying in advance. You're paying as you go. So that's it. That's all. There's no income tax at the end of the year.
So this is an idea that people.
It's an idea called a fair tax. I'm not sure how far it's going to go. In the meantime, Howie Font will be the person who purveys that wisdom to us sometime next week. So Howie, your job is cut out for you. But in the meantime, we have bigger fish to fry. What's going on with TikTok?
Oh gosh.
Well, good to be back. Thank you for having me again, Mary. I'll get right on it. I'm going to look into this great, big, beautiful bill that the Congress is looking at passing, and I will tell you what's inside it. I know for you guys, they're probably going to have to expand the SALT deduction, but the wildfires actually make that politically harder. I'll save that for next week.
Okay.
TikTok is banned no more. So we had a very iffy Martin Luther King holiday weekend where we didn't know, is it happening, is it not happening? And newly inaugurated
Howie, okay, hold it right there. We're going to talk about this in 1 second because I want to go through this.
I got a lot to say about this.
I'll tell you why I want to go through it. Because you're a freak about this. The thing was turned off for like 35 seconds.
It was like Y2K. I felt like we all freaked out about nothing.
Yeah.
People were crying.
But we're going to break it down for you in terms of All right, Big Biz Show. You're in a lather about this TikTok. Do you participate in any social media? I mean, do you look at it?
Not unless I have to.
Really?
Yeah.
I
no desire.
I don't care about TikTok specifically, to be honest, but kids went crazy.
We have Sully Speaks Money on TikTok,
Yes.
which I think we should start doing it. Just take clips of this because it was infotainment about things. Howie could be a big contributor to that, but I think it's interesting is that came from the production assistants here and my two kids that were the age of, hey, why don't you start talking about, and I think we started talking about Tesla 2 years ago.
Yeah, the GameStop.
GameStop, 2 years ago. So it's time to talk about TikTok. Before we go, the law affected a ban on TikTok that said that TikTok either had to be closed down or sold to a U.S. investor to keep Chinese interests out of our kids' heads. And I say kids' heads because I'm assuming the demographic for TikTok has got to be younger than us, right? And if you think in terms of metadata and things that are enemies. Let's think of enemies, North Korea, Iraq, China, Russia, those types of things. I mean, you got to believe that China is probably feeding ideologies into feeds and reels or whatever they're called to kind of shape a 12-year-old into pretty soon, over time, you start changing your mores and your values along the way. Do you think that's a problem?
Part of me thinks that it's also just making our kids lazy and dumb. Which is part of their strategy.
So what happened?
Because our kids are just sucked into this platform. And, we talked with Dan Negroni about their lack of ability to think for themselves and all this stuff. And I think that is even worse than getting their information.
You have two really good girls,
Yes.
sharp as a tack.
Yes, they are.
No, they really are. And what happened, though? What wheels fell off?
Lily woke up on Sunday and she was like, what do I do? She started physically twitching because, she'll lay in bed on a weekend and look at TikTok. And she's like, I keep going back there thinking it's going to be up. And I said, you know what? It's going to be fine. One of my daughters, though, my younger one said, you know what? We're going to find something else. It's fine. I'll look on the bright side of life. She was over it. But my older daughter was not happy.
Howie, let's talk about exactly what happened and what the effect is here, because ironically, the Supreme Court confirmed the ban was constitutional. And right after that, there's talks of suing over the lack of enforcement of the law. So where do we stand and where are we going?
Yeah, so that's what's happening right now. TikTok fought Congress's legislation, they lost, and now Trump is the savior. He started this whole thing. He's the one that said we should ban TikTok, and and now he's given them a 75-day, kind of a random number, 75-day extension. The law allows the president to stall the ban for 90 days, but that can only be done once, and it was done.
So he did 75, thinking he could do another 90 later?
Well, he's just not enforcing it. So that could be challenged and he could be forced to enforce it. But for right now, I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, so Howie, what does compliance by TikTok look like? It looks like being sold to a U.S. owner or being closed down. That's basically the black and white of compliance, correct?
That's basically right. And I also want to bring to your guys' attention, the other issue with TikTok is that it's not just metadata. Congress does not, as we know, have such bipartisan broad support for something like this. But in this case, the TikTok ban flew through. I know there was a closed briefing. We don't know. Congress has classified information that we don't have access to. But if it was able to spook a bipartisan reaction, that tells me that they could definitely, use any phone with TikTok on it as a recording device or anything like that. Now, how much do people care about that? Fine, but probably not something that Congress is going to allow.
I think what's interesting is that Kevin O'Leary, a well-known investor from Shark Tank,
Mr. Wonderful,
he bid $20 billion for a $500 billion property. And so it's a story. When do you buy straw hats?
Right.
In the winter. When do you buy umbrellas? In the summer. And he's taking advantage of the potential where these guys had their back against the wall and it could have been a fire sale. Now obviously it didn't happen. What's the end of that? Couldn't the US put together a group of investors through a bond or something? I mean, if the government's that concerned about it, why don't we do it? Why don't we float a bond and let people invest in it through a US savings bond?
Yeah, so Kevin O'Leary has said he wants to put together a $20 billion bid, which is, a discounted price. You're exactly right. Trump's former Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, says he wants to put a group together. So there's lots of people that are interested, but they're interested because it's cheap right now. And the president has said, listen, whether or not I let this thing through or not determines whether or not your asset is worth $0 or $1 trillion. He keeps saying 0 to $1 trillion. And he says, hey, if I have that much power, then I think the American people should own half of it. So
wait a second, Howie, let's talk about the value. The value is the algorithm. The value is the algorithm, and the algorithm, according to the Chinese government, can't ever leave Chinese government.
Yep. So that's going to be a sticking point,
right? I mean, so what are you selling? A brand name called TikTok? Oh, I got Rick Rock.
Totally.
Yeah, seriously, I got Lick Lock. I mean, honestly, change it, use a different, slightly different logo, and you got the same thing. You don't have anything, is what I'm trying to say. I have nothing if I start Greg Talk.
Yep.
Or Mary Talk, or Sick Sock. I like that.
Yeah, I do. Too.
But the point is, you don't have anything without that algorithm. Just like with Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, which by the way, I'm 100 years old. I seriously refer to it as Instacart all the time. Hey, Mary, you gonna update Instacart?
Easy to flip those.
It really is.
Yeah.
When you're 100 years old. Mary, talk about that.
Well, I want to, something that you said triggered something, because there were so many people the night before it shut down that are actually making a lot of money on TikTok. There are lots of people that their livelihood is their income because they post these videos. So
by the way, it's a decent living. I'll tell you what.
They make a lot of money, yeah.
Yeah, we have almost 100,000 active followers that have done nothing for years, and we could make right now probably 15, 20 grand a year if we accepted some of the people that contact you about us endorsing.
Right.
Well, that's just us doing nothing. There's content creators that are making millions of dollars and $500,000 and $250,000 and actually feeding their family with this.
So they were worried that they didn't have a way to make money the next day. And I didn't know if that played into, there's all of a sudden all these people out of work. I mean, they can then go to your point, they can go to Reels, which a lot of them did on Instagram, but it's a different demographic. My kids don't like that. That's not where they are consuming information. So then why can't we just start a new?
Too, but it's not as popular.
It's not as popular. So is there a world in which we do create another platform and just call it Rick Rock?
The thing that scares me is how much better off are we if the U.S. government floats a bond and owns part of it than having the Chinese government own part of it. I realize the U.S. government's not trying to destroy us, but the U.S. government clearly tries to control us sometimes. Right. So it needs to be a privately held company.
For national interest, though.
Yeah.
Right? You can't this is the modern day Trojan horse.
They're such givers, aren't they?
Let's be honest.
That's true.
The modern day Trojan horse. So there was a reason that Trump had the reaction that he had initially about TikTok.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, why did he flip-flop?
Yeah,
on TikTok.
It's got to.
Yeah, I got to see what I did there. But really, right, flip-flop.
Listen, I'll tell you.
Why did Howie?
Because there's got to be a business deal in the making. There has to be.
Yeah, he's a deal guy. So there's a deal there.
Well, I think he wanted to look like a hero.
Well, I think so too. Of course.
It was fully.
But there is
that's just every politician. But I think there must, because being the business guy, who sort of has some latitude in his. I mean, look at it. He's still selling Trump sneakers. Everybody's still talking about him. He's got inaugurated. There's a Trump sneakers ad on the thing, or there's a Trump. So he clearly has business interests still out there, even though he probably divests from part of them. But think about this. There's got to be a business deal afoot. Mary, you bring up a great point, and so do you, Greg. I think there's something. How do you think it ends up, Howie, before they get out of here?
Yeah, I think that we're not going to end up with America owning half of TikTok, but I do think that the administration is going to be pretty hard negotiators, and it will end up in some form of U.S. control. Probably lose part of the algorithm, which means you get an even lower number than this 20 billion or something like that.
Don't we have the resources in terms of guys like the Instagram folks and the X folks, the Facebook folks, that have enough wherewithal to create something close to a US-based TikTok? And by the way, couldn't this faction of TikTok be taken to the public markets, get 3 broker-dealers to sponsor it and take it public, and now everyone owns it, and look at it, and you vote with your feet, right? You don't like it, you sell your stock. If you like it, you invest in it.
It's tough. There's a lot of proprietary data and proprietary engineering, so you'd have to start from scratch, and there's no chance you get that same mix twice if you don't know how they did it.
Look no further than Vine and
right,
MySpace
exactly.
and
The closest really exists is Instagram, don't you think?
I don't know the difference, frankly. When I'm watching stuff on Instagram,
exactly. I mean, I think they're functionally all the same, but people say that TikTok's algorithm does a better job of, keeping users engaged and keeping them on for longer. And it's still the coolest in the culture to young people that are no longer my peers.
Well, I think, I think Howie and Devin need to have their own TikTok channel for sure. So, thank you, buddy. See you tomorrow. Howie Font. Smart kid. Are you concerned? Are you happy? Like, where do you stand right now? Because you are a social media expert. Are you happy?
Me personally, it doesn't bother me because I don't use it. And I think the kids will find something else to do. They'll go somewhere else.
Well put.
We're going to talk about regenerative farming, a Disneyland for agriculture, a Disneyland for you to kill it, cure it, cook it, pick it, eat it, serve it. Coming up, Big Biz Show. Big Biz Show continues, bigbizshow.com. Mike Costa back next week with us, Barry Burt Godwin, Greg Todoroff, the Day Trader Trio, myself, I'm Sully. 125 million homes strong right here in the U.S. I have a confession for you.
Oh, I'm scared. I'm very scared right now.
We've had our good friend, I'm going to bring Kirk up right now. Kirk Huntsmen, of course, is the CEO of a company called Vivos Therapeutics, who has brought to us here on the program obstructive sleep apnea as something that we need to be paying attention to, and so much so that the network has wanted to put together really a documentary about this. And
Devin's working on it.
They're really the only guys that are going to be. They're the only people that are going to be on it, including some of their patients. But Mike Costa, who suffers from obstructive sleep apnea, decided to go into the dentist at the behest of Kirk, who's right there on the screen, and meet with the doctor about having his oral appliance installed and creating. So I get curious, okay, and I call Kirk. Kirk, what's up, buddy? Good to see you, man. And I said, hey, I don't sleep well, but nobody's ever told me I snored, so I've never had a problem with, and then he kicked me in the side of the head in the middle of the night in the past. But I'm just curious, I'm not a great sleeper, so I went down to this dentist.
You did?
And did a sleep study.
You did? You got the ring and did the whole thing?
Did the whole thing.
You did?
Turns out I should be dead by now.
No way.
Because I'm breathing through a cocktail straw about this big around, right? Kirk's seen my stuff. So guess who got, so
Are you getting one too?
I'm getting one too. And I believe they get delivered here in the next couple of days. So Mike and I are starting the process. But I will tell you, so this is what I want to tell people. Because I don't own a CPAP machine. I don't own, I think the people that have a CPAP machine are when their wives, I'm typically saying wives, yell at their husbands for making that sound in the middle of the night, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have that, yet I am a card-carrying sufferer of OSA. Kirk, that's the most interesting thing I took out of this thing, that all of those open-air indicators, or open-no-air indicators, I should say, weren't there with me, yet I'm one of your biggest candidates based upon the test.
We are just now beginning to realize how pervasive this condition is amongst the American population. I mean, it's a worldwide phenomenon, right? There's 1 billion people around the world that have obstructive sleep apnea, but here in the United States, it's even more acute. I'll tell you a little story just to sort of reinforce what you just said there. I go to church with a couple of guys, one of them is a doctor, the other is just a retired guy, but both of them individually called me here in the last couple of weeks and said, hey, we heard what you do, and we're getting some pressure from the missus to get tested. So I did sleep tests on both these guys. One of them, moderate sleep apnea. The other one, though,
severe.
That the younger guy, 50 years old, in impeccable health otherwise, but he said, I don't have any energy, and I snore a lot. My wife is just, fed up with it. And the AHI of 63. We're talking about super severe sleep apnea. He's desaturated, his blood oxygen levels are down.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that needs to be, he needs to be taken to the emergency room. And I just got those tests. And so people that don't even think that they, like you just said, you may not have all the signs and symptoms, or you may just kind of feel a little off. Get a sleep test. These things are easy.
Well, look,
simple.
I think that's the key there, because I want to implore everyone to go to Vivos.com, go find a dentist on their website.
Just call us.
Or give them a call. But go get a sleep test. I think you should get a sleep test. I think everyone should.
I'll do it.
I think everyone should, because, like, for me, look, I was severely overweight, a victim of my own success 20 years ago, and still didn't snore. And you'd think that you look at some of the cases of people who die in the middle of the night because they forgot to put their CPAP machine on. I don't even own a CPAP machine. Yet, had I not met you, who knows? I mean, because Greg and I get more work done at 4:35 in the morning because both of us are up. I'm not sure, and I am finding myself wanting to fall asleep at 6, 7 o'clock at night sometimes. I mean, and because of the lack of sleep, that's what brought me.
So Kirk, that's what I was going to say, is what are the symptoms that people can kind of think about besides the snoring? Is it exhaustion? Is it, what are the different symptoms that people might present besides just snoring?
That's a great question. So I think the first thing that most people encounter is just sort of a lack of energy, right? They've lost their mojo. How they felt at 20 is not how they feel at 40, or how they felt at 20 is not how they feel at 30. And so the first thing that happens there is that I think snoring is obviously an indicator, and you need somebody else to probably tell you whether you snore or not. None of us believe we snore, right? And so mouth breathing, if there's some mouth breathing that goes on, again, somebody needs to tell you that. But if you have high blood pressure, if you're dealing with diabetes, if you're dealing with any of the downstream symptoms, cardiovascular disease, any type of AFib, all those things, if you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you have some form of chronic disease, diabetes, hypertension, stroke, any of these kinds, you need to ask, do you think I might have sleep apnea? If your doctor isn't recommending that, then patients need to be proactive.
Yeah. It was intent. Remember when you were in studio and we had a pediatrician that would say, if your child is experiencing behavioral issues, or if your child's experiencing bedwetting at the age of 7 or 8 years old, those things. I mean, those are open air indicators for people to take a look at. But as adults, I mean, I'm looking at the most healthy guy in the room here, Greg Todoroff, and I'm thinking to myself, I know you don't snore. Your wife would have yelled at me and you at the same time about it. But I think it wouldn't hurt all of us to get a sleep test, because I will tell you, so I put this thing on, I did a 3-night, I visited the dentist on a Friday, did Friday, Saturday, Sunday, got it back to him on Monday. Next day I get things that, hey man.
No way.
Like I had a 29 or 30 score, which goes from high moderate to severe.
What's normal score?
Yeah, you're right there, borderline severe.
Yeah, and I don't know what that 29 represents. Is that how many times I wake per minute or something?
So what it is, that's called your apnea hypopnea index. And what they do, and this is a little oversimplification, but what they essentially do is every time your airway closes and you have an apnea event, that's called an apnea. Your airway shuts down and you literally cannot take in air.
Yeah.
If that apnea event lasts at least 10 seconds, then it counts towards your apnea hypopnea index. Now, they total those up through the course of an hour, average it out over the course of a night, and you get a score. If you're 30 or more, it's severe. Like this friend of mine came in at 63 one night and 64 another night. So this guy's having a he's got a very severe case of obstructive sleep apnea. And the worst thing is he's actually, his blood oxygen saturation levels are declining, and his heart rate is pumping faster to try to figure out how to get more of that oxygen level and keep it current, or keep it at the same level. So when you have at 29, 30, Sully, you're borderline severe, and it's time to take a look at this. People are shocked at what the scores come in at.
I want to show you guys something. That's 10 seconds. That's 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So you're not
20 times a night. That's 10 seconds.
Whoa.
I just can't. I'm looking at our global clock here in the studio.
Wait.
That was what I said. What I said.
You
What
were
is it?
breathing for 10 seconds.
29 times.
29.
What?
His friend 63.
Now it's just 10 seconds to count towards your index.
Yeah, right.
This guy in the report that I looked at, his high water mark for how long he was not breathing, his high water mark for that night, 40 seconds.
What?
Hey, Kirk,
Yeah.
let's talk about the device real quick before we let you out of here, because this is an oral device. I've seen it. I'm about to put it on soon. It's the more you can wear it, the faster the treatment goes. Average treatment can be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months, whatever. But you're basically changing the physiology of your mouth, your palate, your throat. And Dr. Bahar, your dentist, said here on the air, we have this tube that goes into our lungs through your air pipe and your mouth, and your body will contort it any way it can, just like a tree will wrap itself around to its roots to live. Your body will contort itself, including your skeletal system and your muscular system, to make sure that airway is as clear as it can possibly be, which is why when you change the physiology, sometimes you have to go see a chiropractor, sometimes you have to see an exercise physiologist, sometimes you have to see, to sort of, because you're basically going to make yourself, you'll recall the pictures of Shaquille, geometrically, where his upside down triangle was like this, and his lower triangle was like this, and he was walking like this without even knowing it. His name is Kirk Huntsman, CEO of Vivos Therapeutics. VVOS is their ticker symbol, VVOS, Vivos.com. Thanks, Kirk. Appreciate it. We'll see you in studio here in a couple of weeks. He's going to come back into town. Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
You and Mike can wear your appliances together.
Yeah, we can. We can show you both times. You guys can get a sleep test. I'm serious.
I'm doing it.
I was so surprised. I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. Did you hear me count off 10 seconds?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Big Biz Show. See you in a minute. Hey, they're live from the Loft 100 studios in sunny San Diego, California. 125 million TV homes strong in the U.S. Let's not forget El Financiero Bloomberg in Mexico, an American Forces network in 175 countries and all the ships at sea. God bless our military men and women serving our country overseas underway. Big Biz Show is on the way. Great to see you today. Got Mary here. Got Greg here. I'm Sully. Greg, what's his name?
Mike.
Costa?
Mike.
Yeah.
Costa's back next week. And of course, we got the Day Trader Trio. Great to see you guys. Eduardo Garcia from the movie Charged, from the Magnolia Network television program, Big Sky Kitchen, good friend of the program, chefaeduardo.com. He's got an unbelievable story about how he lost his left arm. And if you look at the movie Charged, you can watch that. And we've talked about it here on the program. But welcome to the program, man. You're in studio. You're live in San Diego, straight from the movie Yellowstone, or the TV Yellow. Is that offensive to Montanans? The program Yellowstone?
I can't speak for all of Montanans, and I'm an equal opportunity.
You.
Yeah, it's not offensive to me. I don't watch TV though. So.
But it's, in terms of Montanans become popular.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because of the exposure on television and movies.
It was a bit of a happy hour scenario. It had a show like the show Yellowstone that publicizes a certain dramatized element of that region, mixed with the COVID migration, everyone trying to go buy a piece of land, go homestead, go find a little piece of something. I realized early on that to just kvetch about it wouldn't get me that far.
So you just keep cooking.
I just invite people to come and just really be a part of bringing great culture.
So you have a food brand called Montana Mex, which is taking a bit of a breather because you are focusing on not only your very successful keynote speaking business and a book that's upcoming and your television program. And I saw the press release regarding the book. Working title for the book and what's it going to be about? Can you bust it out here?
No working title as of yet. And my publisher says it's in the atmosphere and it's slowly descending. I worked on yachts for 10 years, so I traveled the world cooking for everybody, from grandkids to the billionaire owner, whoever it was. And for me, I realized that food is this great conduit. And so it is a story-rich recipe book. The recipes are there. It should lead you into the kitchen with success, but the story connects both myself and others, I think, to how we're built.
So when I travel, first of all, I don't like to look like a tourist because the first thing I do is I go talk to the locals to find out where they go.
Right.
I think let's even take Cabo San Lucas, which is part of Mexico here, and we broadcast, as you know, from San Diego, California. Cabo San Lucas is highly, highly commercialized now. It's like Las Vegas of Mexico. However, there is a farm-to-table restaurant that still exists. It's been there forever down in San Jose del Cabo, where you have to park 400 yards away from the restaurant. You have to walk through and see where, as I always like to say about Eduardo, where they hunt it, kill it, cure it, clean it, serve it, whatever.
Amazing. Yeah.
And this it's what you have termed as agritourism.
Correct.
And experiential agritourism is what your next project's going to be. What is it? And talk about how that works out.
I live in Southwest Montana, and so like Sully, you had mentioned the show Yellowstone, and hey Eduardo, what do you think about it? Are you up in arms? And there were already millions of people coming to my neck of the woods to experience Mother Nature and the boundless outdoors. Now there's tens of millions of people. And so I just see it as an opportunity zone to invite folks into the education of what it is to eat in terroir. So if anyone likes a good glass of wine, I don't need to tell you what Napa Valley is. I don't need to tell you what the Bordeaux region is. And yet Montana has been an agricultural breadbasket since the turn of last century, and never exposed for the quality of the soil, the quality of the air. And so if you have millions of folks driving by, why not invite them to keep it simple, a burger and a milkshake, but it is going to be from the land.
It's a Disneyland for people that want to know where their food comes from, or people that want to know how to cook it, or people that just like to eat, or people that just are curious about environmental agritourism, correct?
Which is all class of people. If you're living and breathing, you're made of food.
Right.
And so you don't really need to go see a therapist. You can just come to the farm and scratch, sniff, understand, explore.
This is all right up your alley.
Well, I'm thinking of, when we talked earlier, you were talking about educating kids people about food, which I think is really important right now because, we're hearing all the time in the news of the processed foods that are being eaten. And we talk about clean eating, and I think I'm on the go all the time. I don't necessarily have time to think about that. I got to feed my kids quickly. Right. So, but what you're doing, educating people and empowering moms, kids, everyone to figure it out and learn more, right?
And learn more and make the conscious capital-rich decision to start purchasing where we want the change to be. Yeah. You can listen. Right now, politics are a hot topic, so I don't need to go there. And yet, I want to use this moment in time to punctuate the absolute agency we each have, and everyone listening. Be the change.
Well, so here,
that change.
So I want to say something here. But what is topical still, and probably more than ever, is anti-ageism. Okay, clean eating, clean living.
Yes.
Okay, there are more folks in the history of this country that have stopped drinking than started drinking in the last 18 months of our history. Now, what does that tell you? Whether it's because we're more concerned about disease, the incidence of high blood pressure or heart disease are higher than ever. But what you're basically doing is you're feeding into this. You guys want to hear about it? You want to know how it's done? I mean, I think there was a scene in a movie. I can't remember what it was, but some cop said to somebody, they pulled over and said, "Look, I know where you're from, and I'm going to give you a break here because I know you're from this area, and we know what it takes to put a steak on the table in this part of the country. So guess what? We're going to let you go. We need to know what it takes to put a radish on a salad. We need it, right?"
1,000%. And I would largely say that connecting the story to your next bite of food will be the most memorable experience you have in how you are alive today. Just capitalizing the experience of living by purchasing a meal, eating a meal.
Or as you say, squeezing the lime, then smelling your fingers.
Yeah, like
when you eat a fish taco.
Absolutely. Tearing basil off of,
I just started doing that, to be honest, and it's my favorite.
I just
started buying the fresh basil and doing it with my kids, and I'm thinking I only have 2 more years with them in the house, and we're starting to have these dinners at home, and to have those moments, and then I love it. But I need to learn a lot more.
For me and Greg, it's about this. For me and Greg, it's about. Yep. It's that sound. It's that
more
sound.
Kettlebell? What is that?
Yeah. those are ice cubes clinking into a tequila glass.
Got it, but I like that too. And I'll just say though, tequila, listen, let's go for the spirits.
Yes.
And yet, if you're going to go for the spirits, plug the spirit back in. Be soulful, be conscious, and be reciprocal in the process. So you can't squeeze soil forever.
Yep.
You have to feed it.
But guess what? As you said off the air with me today, that regardless of what happens politically, what happens in the world, we're still going to be left with the soil.
1,000%.
And we got to eat, and you got to eat.
We will go back into it.
Yeah.
And so you make the bed you want to sleep in.
Wow. Let's go back to the cookbook. Give us an idea of what that new cookbook's going to be.
It will start without mention of seasoning and flavor and method. It will have more to do in the beginning points of every recipe with what the birds were doing that day. If you're a surfer, put it in context, we're in San Diego, you know, when you start seeing that southern swell come in, you know what season it is. When you start seeing the winds shift offshore, you know what season it is. Same for me. I'll hear the American robin show up and I know it's spring. I'll hear or see a different bud pop out of the ground and I know what time of year it is. It's that type of relationship makes my experience with food richer, well beyond flavor. And that's what the book will do.
And I think that brings us to your multiple Emmy, we had 5 or 6 Emmy nominations for Big Sky Kitchen, where you basically hosted a live cooking workshop series. Talk about that show if people haven't seen it. It's on the Magnolia Network. I don't have a problem talking about it on our network because it's a great show. And
I'm so proud of that.
I mean, you've got this Hungry Life series. Talk about that whole.
Big Sky Kitchen is my cooking show, 2 seasons on the Magnolia Network, 14 episodes. I started inviting folks into a non-scripted 2-hour cook-along where you join me. We have 8 cameras, it's full production, and yet I'll ship a cooking kit and recipes to you in your home so you can cook with me.
Is it cook-along?
It's a cook-along.
Really?
Absolutely. And
That's fun.
It's super fun. And the most engaging part is you can invite your kids and your kids can invite their buddies. You can have 30 people in your house all tapping in, tuning in, and that chat bar, we almost have to tone it down because I still want to teach. And yet that chat bar is so full of engagement from people from around the world.
We got live comments
Like a
coming
Zoom
in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
There's someone. There is a 9-person team that is coloring on the fly. They are audio mixing on the fly.
Wow.
There's 9 different cameras, and so if I say, hey, I want to see. Hold on, let's chill the chat bar for a second. I want everyone to notice there's no more water coming out of my French fry, and that's why it's a slower pot. Let's look at this, and so I'll have a live camera come in. We'll look at it, and then Mary from San Diego will pop in and say, but wait a minute. Mine's doing this or this, so then we'll get into that.
Oh, wow.
And so it is a very organic,
Interactive, that's super cool.
and investable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to hear you, and you're going to have a voice. And I think if there's anything that we're missing in today's media landscape, it's representation. And so having a little more equity distributed into a live set, some could say it's risky, dicey. I think it's super interesting.
I think so too.
Yeah.
ChefEduardo.com is your website. How do people find the next step for experiential agritourism? How do people find the book? How do people find the TV show?
I believe in email marketing. I believe that if you give me your email subscription, I will only send you relevant, good material, just like I would if you're sitting in my table. Sure. And so get us your email. We'll keep in touch. We'll let you know what we're up to. And then on Instagram, Chef Eduardo Garcia, say hi.
Buddy, so great to see you.
You too, Sully. Thank you.
Welcome to town once again.
Thank you.
Eduardo Garcia. Check out his movie Charged. It tells his entire story on how we got to here. And of course, check out Big Sky Kitchen and of course, ChefEduardo.com. More Big Biz Show coming up. Stand by. Big Biz Show is on the air. Great to have you along today. We're going to talk about Alzheimer's disease here in just a second. Specifically, agitation in Alzheimer's disease. We've had Ram Makunda on the air with us before. Ram Makunda, we're starting to cover his company here. He's the founder, chairman, CEO of a company called IGC Pharma. And their ticker symbol is IGC. That's IGC. And they've got a very novel approach to Alzheimer's disease, specifically as it has to do with agitation in Alzheimer's disease. And just saw the press release that came out last week talking about participation in fireside chat with Ascendient Capital Markets. I'm lucky enough to have Ram on the air with us today. Once again, I give you Ram Makunda, the founder, chairman, CEO of a company called IGC Pharma. Ram, let's talk about the problem top down real quick for us, because the agitation part is really interesting, and then how you guys are treating it, which is different from anyone else, is actually more interesting. Talk about that. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Sully, thank you for having me back. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing great.
Great to see you.
Thank you. That's an interesting question that you're asking. What is agitation in Alzheimer's? So agitation is not something that's sporadic or just happens and it doesn't happen after 5 minutes. That's not what agitation in Alzheimer's is. It's a set of symptoms like physical aggression, verbal aggression, pacing, where a patient just paces back and forth. Things like motor movement, opening and closing a drawer. So these are all symptoms that contribute to a syndrome called agitation in Alzheimer's, and it's caused by neuroinflammation in the brain.
Rob, let me interrupt you. Does every Alzheimer patient suffer from this portion?
So about 76% of the Alzheimer's patients suffer from this, and it makes it very, very difficult to take care of the patient. If you're physically aggressive, verbally aggressive, the caretaker has a hard time managing the patient, and so has to put the patient in a nursing home. So it is one of the leading causes of actually separating families.
Interesting.
And the current, go ahead, you were going to ask me.
Well, no, it's just it's interesting because you think in terms of, and I think as our parents get older, you start seeing signs of either dementia or they're repeating themselves, and that doesn't happen to everybody, but the population's there, and the more incidents of agitation I hear about, the more frustrated I hear families talk about, because there's no treatment that's actually effective, and you guys are moving towards a treatment that is THC based, which is interesting. So let's talk about that for a minute.
So in 2014, we acquired the rights to a lot of research that was done at the University of South Florida. And what they found was on cell lines of Alzheimer's, very, very low doses of THC, along with other molecules, reduces beta amyloid buildup, which is one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's. Plaque, and the other hallmark of Alzheimer's is tangles. So it actually reduces both of those. We got the rights to that research, and we created a formulation which is essentially a liquid formulation, which can be taken, which is taken in the morning and then in the evening. It's like 1 milliliter. You can put it in your orange juice. Very easy to give a patient that has Alzheimer's. So that is the medication. It's THC based, and what's interesting is that our THC comes from hemp. The 2018 Farm Bill in the U.S. legalized hemp, and hemp is essentially 0.3% THC or less. And our medication has a very, very low dose. It's lower than 0.3%. So it's legal in the US. We grow hemp, and we're able to extract the THC, make our medication, everything within the federally legal framework in the US.
So you're not getting granny high.
Wow.
We're not getting granny high. You're absolutely right.
Not to mention, though, they're also farm to table. So they're not, right? So they're not going out and having to find it. They're actually producing it themselves.
Yes.
Right.
But getting granny high is an interesting question, because look, if you give THC or if you give marijuana to an elderly person, the risk of falls is very high.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Risk of, and at an older age, if you're 80, if you fall and break a hip, it decreases your life.
Well, I always tell my parents the worst place for them is in the hospital. You think it'd be the safest place, but you're absolutely right.
I just went through this with my mom, so yeah, it's not.
Ram, talk about how that therapy works, because if you think in terms of your top line drug, which is AD1, right? I just see AD1-1.
Correct. Yes.
Physically, how does it work in the body?
So what it does is it has two active pharmaceutical ingredients. It reduces neuroinflammation, which is inflammation in the brain, and it also reduces. Essentially, that's the key mechanism, is neuroinflammation. There's a couple of other things it does. It also harmonizes the different neurotransmitters that are in the brain. It rebalances neurotransmitters, but that's the main mechanism. It's neuroinflammation, and what the medication does is it goes after neuroinflammation. It reduces that, which is one of the indicators or one of the causes of agitation in Alzheimer's.
I think the piece of this that is most interesting and gives us the most encouragement is the use of AI in this whole process. Talk about how that works. And is that in terms of velocity of research? Is that in terms of how you change the way the medication is administered? How is AI helping you?
couple of different ways. We use AI in the clinical trial. It allows us to, it essentially allows us to figure out what kind of a patient we should get in a larger phase 3 trial. So we are able to analyze data. We're able to look at how the different patients respond to the medication, what kind of adverse events they might get. And so AI helps us in many different ways in the clinical trial itself. We're able to better select patients using AI.
Hey, Ram, I wanted to ask, what are some of the other disorders or diseases or whatever that could be treated with this? Because I think you've mentioned on the program different things like sleep disorders, PTSD even.
Right, PTSD, sleep disorder, there's a potential for depression as well. And the larger market, as you know, is agitation, essentially, or anxiety is another one that we could potentially treat with this. So other neuropsychiatric symptoms, agitation, depression, sleep disorder is a big one. Even eating disorder, if you think about, THC, the people who smoke weed, they sort of want to eat food afterwards. So that's another area that we could look at.
Ram, I appreciate you coming. I can't wait to get you in San Diego at some point, and we'll see you again here in the next week and a half or so. Ram Makunda, IGC Pharma, approaching Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's agitation in a way that hasn't been done before, but go to their website, igcpharma.com. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it. More Big Biz coming up. Stand by.